My brother Phil is really into macro style photography, and he and his family were visiting in October of this year. And I remember watching him with his camera. He's got a Nikon, I think it's a D3200, and a 35 millimeter lens and a set of close-up filters. Similar to me, I've got a 50 millimeter lens and a set of close-up filters, but his lens gets just a slightly wider field of view. Otherwise, it's basically the same, like plus, I think it's a plus 2, 4, and 10 filters. Regardless, while they were visiting, he spent a lot of time taking close-up shots, often just in the front yard of my house while the kids were playing and we're just out there chatting, and he'd have his camera and he'd be like, oh, look, some tree bark, and he'd take a picture. Oh, look, a brick with a little spot on it. He'd go take a picture. And I remember watching him thinking, like, that's weird. None of that seems like it's photo worthy to me, but you know, I'll let him do his thing. And then I looked at some of the pictures he took and I was like, wow, this is really cool. I never thought about going literally just in my front yard on a October day and using that as like a canvas for taking close-up shots. So even though I talk about this a lot here on the blog about finding photo opportunities in regular things, it was fun to watch him because I kind of saw my own front yard with renewed eyes. That led to this shot and kind of a renewed interest in my own macro photography, which is something I kind of go back and forth on. I'll go for a while and do macro shots and then forget about it and do something else. And after he came to visit, and he and his family, I thought, well, I need to get back into this stuff. And this is one of the results of that interest in macro photography. It was raining for a couple days in mid-November, and I remember on one of these rainy days, I was thinking to myself, I should bring my camera and see if I can get a picture of a drop of water on a leaf. So I did. The next day, I brought my camera and I used my plus 10 filter, which is generally a little overkill. It's too close for a lot of situations, but I thought it would be great for this since a drop of water is pretty small, so you need to get really close in there. And I knew where I wanted to go to take this picture. This is in the formal gardens in front of the Student Union. And I don't know what these plants are, but they have these really rich colors, especially as the leaves turn. And I thought the rain combined with these rich colors, these yellows and reds, would make a really good shot. And it sure did. I shot this with my D7100 50 millimeter lens. And I took a variety of shots at different apertures, and it's really hard to tell. It's kind of like I have trouble just trusting my instincts on this, or rather not trusting my instincts, because my brain says, well, if you want a really good shot with a shallow depth of field, you need a large aperture. But that's not true when you're doing macro. You need a small aperture because you're so close that the depth of field with a large aperture is so unwieldy. I shot this at f6.7. I remember taking this and thinking, this will never work. So I shot some at f4 and f2.8, and those didn't work at all. Those were like just a blurry mess with a sliver of depth of field, like a sliver of in focus area. This had a little wider depth of field, which is great for this shot. It works really well here. This was 1/180th of a second, ISO 250, and I think I even used live view to get this composition. One of the tricky parts about a shot like this is the water droplet seems almost blurry, but it's actually in focus. If you click on the photo and go to the original on Flickr, you can see there's reflections in the water droplet that are super clear. It's just those blurry bows in the front part of it that make it look like the droplet's out of focus. But that's just the reflection itself is kind of blurry. The droplet itself is actually in focus. So anyway, that's probably neither here nor there. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is macro photography can be really cool, and it's fun to see things with new eyes, especially if someone else is with you who might be looking at the same things in a different way that you normally see them. And that's kind of how I got this shot here. And so this is inspired by my brother Phil. Phil, if you're listening, thank you. I appreciate it. Looking forward to doing more shots like this.